know what these are.
You mean the lantern thing they do for the princess?
Lanterns. I knew they weren't stars.
The lanterns are not stars, the curtains are more than just blue, and lights in Tangled might be more than just lights? Hello, and welcome to It Is That Deep. My name is Amber, and on this channel we're going to dig in and explore deep analysis of books, movies, and TV. Today, we're going to be talking about the many different symbolic interpretations that can be taken from the use of light in Disney's Tangled, both in terms of actual physical lights, like the lanterns, and in the way that the scenes in the movie are lit. Surprisingly, symbolism can be drawn from both, as we will see. As for spoilers for today's video, I'll be discussing spoilers for Tangled, and nothing else, just Tangled. This is a very focused video. If you've seen the movie and don't need a recap, feel free to skip to the timestamp listed on the screen, or to the bookmark labeled Understanding Symbolism. Alright, let's dig into it. Tangled is a Disney animated movie from 2010, featuring the voice talents of Mandy Moore as Rapunzel, Zachary Levi as Flynn Rider, and Donna Murphy as Mother Gothel. Tangled is based on the story Rapunzel from Grimm's fairy tales. For those who don't know, the Brothers Grimm didn't actually write the fairy tales, but rather they collected them from various written and oral traditions. They published Rapunzel as part of a compilation of children's stories in 1812. Their version is most closely related to a much older story, a French tale named Percinet, written by Charlotte Rose de Caumont de la Force in 1698. And that in turn closely resembles the Italian tale Petronella, written by Giambattista Basile in 1634. Disney made some changes to the story to make it more internally consistent, particularly in the way the magic works. The story follows Rapunzel and her adventure with Flynn Rider as she escapes the abusive woman who claims to be her mother. But to go back to the start, the story goes that a drop of pure sunlight fell to the ground and produced a magic golden flower that had the power to heal people. Over the course of centuries, a kingdom develops a short way away, where a beloved king and queen are expecting a baby. However, the queen gets deathly ill near the end of her pregnancy, so the people go out in search of the mythical flower in the hopes of saving her. They manage to do this, and Rapunzel is affected by the magic of the flower and is born with beautiful golden hair that closely resembles it. Shortly after her birth, her parents launch a flying lantern in celebration. Centuries prior, an old woman, Gothel, had found the flower and had been secretly using it to keep herself looking young all that time, using the power of a magical song to activate the flower. With the flower used up on the queen, Gothel sneaks into the castle, correctly guessing that Rapunzel now possesses the magic from the flower, which seems to exist in her hair. Gothel intends to simply take a lock of Rapunzel's hair with her, but discovers that if it gets cut, it turns brown and is no longer magical, so she decides instead to kidnap her and hide her away in a tower where she can regularly use her hair as her new flower. Every year on Rapunzel's birthday, the kingdom launches thousands of flying lanterns out of respect for the lost princess and in hopes that they might find her one day. Years later, Rapunzel approaches her 18th birthday and has been longing to leave her tower, specifically to see what the lanterns are all about, which she has seen from a distance. However, Gothel refuses to allow her to leave. At the same time, wanted thief Flynn Rider, along with two accomplices, the Stabbington brothers, steal her crown from the castle and are on the run. Flynn betrays the brothers and escapes the guards by climbing into Rapunzel's tower, not knowing that it's occupied by a young lady armed with a heavy frying pan. After hiding away an unconscious Flynn, Rapunzel tries again to get Gothel to let her out. Failing that, she tricks her into leaving for a few days so that she can convince Flynn to act as her guide to go see the lanterns and return home in the time that Gothel is gone. She manages to convince him by hiding away the bag with the crown in it, telling him that she'll return it if he takes her to see the lanterns, which he eventually agrees to do. Not long after they leave, Gothel is compelled to return home to check on Rapunzel, discovering far earlier than expected that she is gone. She follows Rapunzel and Flynn through a series of adventures, conspires with the Stabbington brothers who are now out for revenge against Flynn, and does what she can to manipulate Rapunzel into coming back with her, including giving her the crown and challenging her to give it back to Flynn to prove that he isn't interested in her like she thinks he is. Rapunzel and Flynn do go see the lanterns, where they recognize their feelings for each other, and Rapunzel gives him back the crown, but then Flynn is distracted by seeing the Stabbington brothers. Flynn goes to them to turn over the crown, which he no longer wants, but Gothel told them about Rapunzel's power, and they attack Flynn and try to kidnap Rapunzel, telling her that Flynn betrayed her and is sailing away with the crown. Gothel then just happens to show up and knock the brothers out, convincing Rapunzel to come away with her. Flynn gets arrested after being set up by the Stabbington brothers to take the fall for the crown, but manages to escape and goes to find Rapunzel. Back at the tower, Rapunzel notices patterns in her art that bring back memories from when she was very small, and she suddenly realizes that she is the lost princess. She confronts Gothel about this, who then plans to take her away to make sure that no one ever finds them again. But then Flynn shows up, calling up to Rapunzel to drop her hair so he can climb up. Gothel tricks him by dropping Rapunzel's hair, and as he climbs into the tower, she stabs him. Rapunzel then makes a deal with Gothel that if she lets her use her hair to save Flynn, she will willingly go with her and let her use her hair forever. However, Flynn manages to save her instead by cutting off her hair before she can heal him. All of Gothel's aging catches up with her in moments, and in true Disney fashion, falls to her doom out of the tower window, and she is nothing but dust by the time she hits the ground. Rapunzel desperately tries to use her remaining hair to heal Flynn, but of course it has now lost its magic, and Flynn dies in her arms. She sings the magic song and cries, but when her tears touch him, it turns out that they are also filled with magic, and he is healed and comes back to life. They then go home to her real parents, the kingdom celebrates, and everyone lives happily ever after. Light is an ongoing theme in the movie, perhaps most notably with the physical lanterns and their accompanying song, I See the Light, but it features prominently in other areas of the movie as well. As with many well-written stories, the lights are more than just lights, they come to symbolize more. A note about understanding symbolism. There are popular internet posts that mock English teachers for going on about symbolism that the students feel is a stretch. Here's one version of it. For instance, the curtains were blue. What your teacher thinks. The curtains represent his immense depression and his lack of will to carry on. What the author meant. The curtains were freaking blue. This has been summarized and referenced with the simple phrase, the curtains are just blue. Let me tell you, as someone who enjoys literature and art, this phrase makes me rage. It's just another form of thought-terminating cliche, not unlike the one that forms the antithesis of the title of this channel, just packaged in meme form. For one thing, every choice in fiction is a choice, whether the writer is aware of it or not. Why blue curtains? Why not black or white or red or any other color? Why mention the color at all? And even when a color is not specifically mentioned, that's a choice too. One that maybe says that the color was nothing noticeable, perfectly socially acceptable, and not relevant to the matter at hand. Color and all sorts of literary and artistic choices create mood and fit, or pointedly don't fit, genre in important ways. If you have a gritty crime novel, glittery pink curtains with strawberry shortcake on them don't fit, unless it's meant as an intentional juxtaposition with the mood. Similarly, in a whimsical kid story, gray, tattered curtains don't make sense either. These choices mean something, even if it's not quite as obvious as blue curtains mean depression, though sometimes that's what it is too. Furthermore, this movie is animated. That means that no part of it uses natural outdoor light like a live-action movie might, though lights in those situations are fairly controlled as well. Every single source of light had to be placed and angled, its intensity, sharpness, and color determined, all with intention, because you can't do otherwise and end up with anything resembling a good result. If you haphazardly add lights in a 3D scene, it looks bad. These are intentional choices. Similar to literary choices, lights create mood, direct our attention, and say something, even if it's so subtle that we don't recognize it at first glance. Okay, done with the raging, back to Tangled. Lights in the story can represent a lot of different things, such as hope, dreams, freedom, courage, awareness, and happiness. So let's discuss. The main basis of the story comes from sunlight, starting with the drop of sun that produced the magic flower. In this case, it represents all that is good and helpful. Throughout the story, we see that all positive light has that warm sunlight type glow to it. The exception to this positive nature of light is Gothel's lantern, which is made of green glass, giving the light connected with her something of a sickly green glow. In pretty basic color theory, there is a concept of warm versus cool colors. Warm colors are in the red, orange, yellow range, and cool colors are in the green, blue, purple range. As we discussed before, colors can have a variety of meanings, positive or negative, just like the same object can mean different things in different stories. In this case, most of the warm colors represent positive things, while the cool colors represent negative things. That is, of course, a broad generalization, but it does create a pretty cohesive mood for the movie. Gothel's cool-toned Green Lantern is a perfect example of this, in that it is a strong contrast to the warm sunlight and fire tones. Saturation, how vibrant versus how close to gray a color is, also has an effect on mood and story, which I'll discuss later. When the queen gets sick, the legend of the flower is the kingdom's only hope to save their queen. In this sense, the sunlight-produced flower is hope. After Rapunzel is born, the first floating lantern launched is to show her parents joy at her birth, and the entire kingdom celebrates with them. The tone of the lanterns then turns sorrowful after Gothel kidnaps Rapunzel. While they represent the king and queen's sorrow, it more accurately represents their hope for her return. Additionally, when it comes to sorrow for a lost loved one, it's often based in the love that we had for them. The loss of someone with whom we shared great love hurts as much as it does because of all the joy we had while they were here. Given that, the lanterns, even though they are marking their sorrow, are in some ways also flown in memory of their joy. The lanterns are released in darkness, which is the first of several instances where light is both logical and meaningful. Throughout the movie, lights are often sensible in terms of storytelling and scene setup, but this doesn't preclude them from also having deeper meaning. In this case, lanterns in the dark make sense as part of a realistic scene setup. They show a beautiful contrast to the darkness, so it makes sense within the story to hold a ceremony like this where the effect would be most striking. But metaphorically, the light in the darkness also becomes a symbol of hope in the face of despair. From the king and queen's perspective, they are releasing this hope into the world with no way of knowing if it means anything or will affect anything. But that in her tower, Rapunzel sees the lanterns each year and they fill her with hope, even if she doesn't know their purpose. In her case, they represent a dream of the world outside her tower, and though she might not be fully aware of it yet, a desire for freedom from the repressive life she leads. In the Mother Knows Best sequence, Gothel repeatedly uses light and darkness to manipulate Rapunzel, both in terms of gaining her attention and in the way that the light represents Rapunzel's hope. At the start of the scene, the main entrance window and curtains over a glass window are open, letting in plenty of light. Rapunzel brings up her desire to see the lanterns for her 18th birthday, though she doesn't know what they are yet, and simply calls them floating lights. Gothel, who definitely knows what Rapunzel is talking about, brushes her off by claiming Rapunzel must just be talking about the stars. During this conversation, Rapunzel opens a window set near the ceiling through which she has watched and charted the stars in the past, which lets in even more light. As the song begins, Gothel goes through the tower and shuts out every one of these sources of light. She starts by closing the main entrance window when she acknowledges that Rapunzel wants to leave. She closes the curtains on another window as she acknowledges that of course this day was going to come sooner or later, making it sound like maybe one day she will let Rapunzel out, but she's still too young right now. She then asserts that she knows best and Rapunzel needs to listen to her, and then she shuts out the very last of the light in the tower. Rapunzel then lights a candle, but in the limited light, Gothel intentionally startles her, telling her that she should be afraid of the world. Rapunzel sits in the spotlight, but the various things that Gothel tells her to fear, ruffians, thugs, and poison ivy, show up as shadow puppets blocking out the light. When Gothel suggests the plague as something to fear, her face is lit from below by the creepy green lantern rather than any of the pleasant light we see elsewhere. Rapunzel then sits wrapped fearfully in her hair next to a single candle, which Gothel pulls her away from, but then immediately abandons her. Gothel then shows up on the stairs, where she is surrounded by many candles, all lighting her up, which she then quickly blows out. Next, we see Rapunzel methodically lighting candle after candle in a line, with Gothel following right behind, snuffing out each one, as she tells her that she has no hope of survival if she goes out on her own. While there are brief moments of light, ultimately she darkens everything, until Rapunzel is literally groping around in the dark, scared and unable to see anything, until suddenly Gothel brings the spotlight back on herself, the only point of light in the room at that point. As she says, all she has is one request. Rapunzel runs to her in relief of having some amount of light, only for Gothel to tell her that she's not ever allowed to even ask about leaving again. Every one of these moments points to Gothel's intention. Rapunzel is not allowed to have any light in her control. The only light allowed in Rapunzel's world is Gothel. When we look at the light symbolically, we see how Gothel wants to extinguish any sort of independent hope Rapunzel might have, demanding that all of Rapunzel's hope, joy, and security be focused entirely on her. Gothel also tries to control the situation by lying about and minimizing the lanterns. Both before Mother Knows Best and after she returns later, Gothel insists on claiming that the lanterns Rapunzel is talking about are just the stars. Obviously, she knows otherwise, but it's in her interest to encourage Rapunzel to believe that these things that she has been dreaming of are actually just far away and no special spectacle to go out and see. She can get just as good of a view from her tower. Why would she need to go out into the world to see them? She has everything she needs right here, far away from any dreams that are so impractical anyway. The fact that Gothel gets to throw in a bit of infantilizing and implication that Rapunzel is foolish or naive is just a bonus for her. After Rapunzel gets Gothel to leave, supposedly for multiple days, she acts on her decision to get Flynn to take her to the lanterns. She doesn't know anything about him at this point, and Gothel has told her all about the dangers of the world, so she is understandably on her guard. After tying him to a chair using her hair, she calls out to him from the shadows, claiming that she's not afraid of him, though that is plainly untrue. Finally, she builds up enough courage that she can step into the light and really confront him. This dichotomy of light and darkness, standing for courage and fear, comes back multiple times in the movie. After Flynn begrudgingly agrees to help her, he climbs down the tower the way he came up, while she stands on the lip of the window, hesitating before making such a big step to leave for the first time. This is another moment, like the nighttime lanterns, that the lighting makes sense for the setup of the scene, but it can be read into a little bit more. Naturally, the outside world is brighter in the uninterrupted sunshine than her tower is, simply by virtue of the tower having a roof that blocks the sun. But the way the scene is lit from an art and story perspective is interesting as well. While she hesitates, she's still partially in shadow, but she's looking outward and her face is lit by the sun. She sings, "Look at the world so close and I'm halfway to it. Look at it all so big, do I even dare?" She turns back toward her tower room and she is once again enveloped in shadow. And she asks, "Should I?" debating about going back. Then she firmly says no, turns back to the sun, and quickly launches herself out into the bright world. The light of freedom is what she needs, but it still takes courage for her to face the light in order to get there. After Rapunzel and Flynn leave the tower, Gothel runs into Maximus, a palace horse. Gothel realizes that Rapunzel might be found by the palace guards, and she runs back to the tower to check on her. As she arrives, clouds have rolled in, making the whole scene overcast and desaturated. By the time she arrives at the top of the tower and discovers that Rapunzel truly is gone, the clouds have blocked the sun so thoroughly that the entire tower room is dark and nearly devoid of color. As Gothel stands there panicking, The little bit of light entering the room catches on one of the jewels in the crown that Rapunzel hid away and shines in Gothel's eyes. When she investigates, she is horrified that Rapunzel had something in her possession that could have potentially told her who she really is. But she also finds the information she needs to go after Rapunzel and Flynn. The use of light and desaturation of the scene creates mood, as well as providing information to Gothel. The way light provides and represents information and awareness is a theme that returns a few more times throughout the story. At one point in their journey, Rapunzel and Flynn end up at a tavern filled with men who seem a little scary to Rapunzel at first, but then they end up in a musical number about everyone's dreams, because this is a Disney movie. In Rapunzel's part of the song, she describes how the lanterns are her dream, but beyond that, she is thoroughly enjoying the freedom that has come from following that dream and leaving her tower. They then have to flee when the palace guards come into the tavern looking for Flynn, and the men in the tavern help them sneak out through a secret tunnel exit. As they walk through the tunnel, Flynn carries a glass lantern to light their way through the tunnel, but it has the nice warm glow of all the other positively themed lights, rather than the cold green light that comes from Gothel's lantern, encouraging the audience's trust in and fondness for Flynn. After a number of rapid events stemming from Flynn and Rapunzel having to run from the guards, they find themselves trapped in a cave that is steadily filling with water. Flynn desperately tries to find a way out, and he thinks there might be a way to dislodge some stones at the bottom, but he can't see in the darkness. Rapunzel tries to dive down herself, but he pulls her back up, saying, "There's no point, it's pitch black down there." Again, the darkness makes sense from a story perspective, but it also serves as a symbol for despair, as the two of them nearly give up and prepare to drown. As they share a moment of vulnerability together where Flynn tells Rapunzel his real name, Eugene, Rapunzel tells him about her magical hair, at which point she realizes that the light it produces is just what they need. The light from her hair illuminates the cave, allowing them to see exactly what is in front of them and saves their lives. The light restores their hope and gives them clarity of vision. After the events of the cave, Rapunzel and Flynn sit and talk around a campfire, unaware that Gothel has been following them. They share a nice moment before Flynn, feeling somewhat awkward around the sincerity, leaves to find some more firewood, at which point Gothel approaches Rapunzel. Leading up to a reprise of Mother Knows Best, Gothel keeps trying to tug Rapunzel away from the firelight and into the darkness. Once again, this is something that makes sense in the course of the story and scene setup, but here we can consider other possible scene setups the writers and artists could have chosen. Why weren't Rapunzel and Flynn sitting in the moonlight, or by smoldering coals? Why weren't they sitting in shadow, perhaps implying a certain sense of intimacy there? Why doesn't Gothel have any light to guide Rapunzel back? In this case, she doesn't even have her green lantern. Just like stating that the curtains are blue, having Flynn and Rapunzel sit around a warm, pleasant fire for their conversation, and Gothel bringing no light at all, were choices they had to make in their story design. I can't say for certain that when they made those choices that they had this exact symbolism in mind, but I think there is something to be said for at least a goal of correctly setting the mood. As for symbolism itself, it's clear that Rapunzel has freedom, hope, and happiness in her experiences with Flynn, which I would say is represented by the fire, while Gothel wants to pull her away from all of that into the cold darkness of captivity, despair, and misery with her. Through the Mother Knows Best reprise, Gothel gives Rapunzel the crown, challenging her to give it to Flynn to see if he actually likes her or if he's just putting up with her until he can get his prize back. Rapunzel defiantly says she will, and Gothel leaves. Afterward, Flynn returns to the fire, talking about something goofy, and Rapunzel is standing with her back to him and to the fire. It's implied that she just finished stashing the crown, afraid of giving it to Flynn just yet. She hides the crown deep in the shadows behind a tree and doesn't face the light herself immediately afterward, which shows how she is retreating into her fear. The next morning, they go into the kingdom for the Lantern Festival. The city is covered in decorations, a major one being the symbol of the kingdom, a sun with 7 rays. This comes into play in the plot later, but it's also just one more representation of everything bright and beautiful about the city that fills Rapunzel with joy in ways her old life never could. We then see a montage of their day together in the kingdom. The main focus is Rapunzel, Flynn, and the people of the kingdom dancing, but it's intercut with other parts of their day as well. A few notable moments include Flynn buying a sun flag for Rapunzel, Rapunzel using chalk to draw in the town square, and the two of them sitting in a room looking at a bunch of atlases. The sun flag is important both as a plot device and as a symbol of the Day of Freedom. When Rapunzel decorates the town square, she uses chalk to emphasize the sun mosaic on the ground and adds drawings of the people in the city who have been dancing with them, and she uses vibrant, saturated golds and pinks and purples. In the shot of Rapunzel and Flynn looking at the atlases, they're indoors and the sun is setting, but the light in the room is still that nice, warm, golden glow, highlighting the atlases. This moment also presumably shows Rapunzel realizing just how big the world is and just how much freedom could exist for her if she stayed, as well as showing the bond growing between her and Flynn. As the lantern ceremony approaches, Flynn takes Rapunzel out on the water in a small boat, saying that it will be the best view. For a little while, they sit quietly in the dark, and Rapunzel starts to feel very anxious. She tells him that she's terrified, and he asks her why. She says, "I've been looking out a window for 18 years, dreaming about what it might feel like when those lights rise in the sky. What if it's not everything I dreamed it would be?" And Flynn tells her, "It will be." And she says, "And what if it is? What do I do then?" Flynn replies, "Well, that's the good part, I guess. You get to go find a new dream." In that moment, we have the upcoming light show representing her dream, but first she's sitting in the dark, afraid. What if this dream isn't what she thinks it is? And by extension, what if freedom isn't all she thinks it is? What if all these things that she's been putting into these lights, the freedom, the hope, everything good, is not what she expected? What if it's just not good enough? Flynn assures her that it's amazing and worth it, the lights, the freedom, and everything out in the world. The lanterns are the dream, but there is more to the world, more dreams and freedom and joy to be had beyond what she can even imagine. Before the lantern ceremony begins, there's a small scene of the king and queen as they prepare to go out and launch the first lantern. There's no dialogue, but their silent interaction is enough to make quite the heartbreaking scene. You can see that they have just about given up hope, which, given the context, is understandable. Their child went missing nearly 18 years ago. At what point are they just going through the motions of hope, but are internally aware that she's almost certainly never coming home? And then on top of that, this grief that had been something that it seemed the entire kingdom understood and respected is now shown to not matter to at least some of them, as evidenced by the fact that someone was bold enough to break in and steal their missing child's crown. What was a collective mourning when it happened has now closed down to a private grief between the parents, while the rest of the kingdom uses it simply as a festival day. This isn't canon, but my personal interpretation of that scene is that it may be them deciding, one last time, but after this we need to be done. Even if the festival were to continue, they need to be preparing to close the book on any hope they have of seeing Rapunzel ever again. This theme of sinking hope is echoed during the I See the Light sequence, when all the lanterns are floating around Rapunzel and Flynn, and the king and queen's lantern gets close to them and almost lands in the water, dousing the light and sinking to the depths. But at the last moment, Rapunzel reaches out and gently lifts it back into the sky, signifying that because of her and her decisions throughout the story, they don't need to lose hope. If she had sat by and not done anything, the lantern would have hit the water and sunk. She has to stretch far out from the boat and metaphorically make decisions far out of her comfort zone to lift up the lantern and the hope it symbolizes. When Rapunzel sees the lanterns for the first time, she's amazed beyond her expectations. In the first verse and chorus of I See the Light, she sings, "All those days watching from the windows, all those years outside looking in, all those years never even knowing just how blind I've been. Now I'm here blinking in the starlight, now I'm here suddenly I see. Standing here it's oh so clear, I'm where I'm meant to be. And at last I see the light, and it's like the fog is lifted. And at last I see the light, and it's like the sky is new. And it's warm and real and bright, and the world has somehow shifted." Rapunzel has been craving freedom her whole life, and it's not until she achieves it that she realizes just how amazing it really is. She realizes that the freedom is what she needs and where she belongs. A parallel of this realization is in the last line of the chorus, "All at once, everything looks different now that I see you," when she realizes that she finds much of the same comfort and freedom in Flynn. In the earlier scene in the tavern talking about dreams, Flynn established that his dream was essentially to be rich and alone. During the scene by the fireside, Flynn tells Rapunzel about how he grew up in an orphanage with nothing, which provides some context to his character. When you've been impoverished and downtrodden all your life, financial stability can be something of a dream. But then in I See the Light, Flynn's moment of realization is that what he described previously is no longer important to him, and has been replaced by his new dream of being with Rapunzel. As understandable as his previous desires were, Rapunzel is so important to him now that she ends up surpassing them. The light in the song very clearly symbolizes this new sense of awareness and understanding of each other, and what's really important to both of them. Right at the end of I See the Light, Flynn gets distracted by the Stabbington brothers signaling to him from the shore, and they're using Gothel's green lantern to do so. It's attention-grabbing light, but again stands in stark contrast to the warm-toned light of all the floating lanterns and all that is good. When Flynn tries to hand over the crown to them, they attack him and tie him up to make it look like he has abandoned Rapunzel and is sailing away with the crown. When the brothers try to capture Rapunzel, Gothel comes to her rescue by knocking them unconscious. She tells Rapunzel that she was just so worried about her, and they need to leave quickly before the brothers regain consciousness. Before Rapunzel decides to leave with her, she looks after Flynn, apparently sailing away into the dark. At this point, the Lantern Festival is over, and you can just see the last of the glowing lanterns fading to the distance along with Flynn. As he leaves, all of the light and all of Rapunzel's hope and joy leaves with him, leaving her devastated in the darkness. Then she turns back to Gothel, who is now holding the only source of light, and runs to her, saying she was right about everything. Rapunzel and Gothel return to the tower, where Gothel unbraids her hair and declares it never happened, and expects things to go back to the way they were. Gothel goes to leave the room and then looks back at the silent, heartbroken Rapunzel.
"I really did try, Rapunzel. I tried to warn you what was out there. The world is dark and selfish and cruel. If it finds even the slightest ray of sunshine, it destroys it."
Going back to the sunshine theme, Gothel essentially tells Rapunzel that the world isn't where the sunshine, freedom, joy, etc. is, and thinking so was foolish and led to the little sunshine she had being ruined. Later, during the confrontation, Rapunzel calls Gothel on this lie, saying, "You were wrong about the world, and you were wrong about me." Even though Rapunzel lets Gothel untie her braid and quietly seems to go along with her statement of, "It never happened," it is then revealed that she has been holding onto the kingdom flag with the sun design that Flynn had bought for her at the festival. She's heartbroken over Flynn, and she's heartbroken over the thought that Gothel may have been right about the world, but she's not quite ready to give up on the memory of the freedom and hope that she got to feel that day. As she looks at the flag, she notices that the particular 7-rayed shape of the sun exactly matches the negative space in a part of the mural on her ceiling. And she starts to look at all her paintings and realizes that this shape shows up as a negative space, a missing piece, everywhere in the room. This triggers memories from when she was very young and a sudden knowledge of who she really is. Once again, the concept of light, as depicted in the sun shape, represents awareness and clarity that creates a huge shift in her understanding of herself and her world. The climax proceeds as I described previously. Rapunzel confronts Gothel, Gothel tries to take her away, and Flynn comes to her rescue. As he arrives at the tower, clouds roll in, similar to how they had before when Gothel was panicking over Rapunzel's escape. This is a classic storytelling and mood-setting technique. Clouds and rain often mean sadness. Though not always. You can see how many romances have the couple coming together and kissing in the rain. But here, it also adds to the ongoing symbolism of light. After Gothel and Flynn both die, there's a simply gorgeous shot of Rapunzel and Flynn viewed from above, and a lot of the mood is created by the dimness of the room. Of all the moments where color and saturation matter, this is the most important. The view is very nearly grayscale, allowing us as the viewer to understand the scene is dim, but not actually so dim that we can't see what's happening. And the whole effect of the light and color, along with the events of the scene, set a tone that provokes a profound sadness. But then when Rapunzel's tears heal Flynn, light flares out of his wound and eventually fills the room with the classic warm glow seen throughout the movie, made all the more striking against the cold gray of the room. And then even after the healing light disappears, saturation has returned to the scene, and an outside view of the tower shows that the sun has come back out from behind the clouds. Again, this is something of a classic way to set mood, but light very strongly symbolizes joy in general here. When Rapunzel finally reunites with her real parents, the scene takes place outdoors. The king and queen have been inside, but after being summoned by one of their guards, their meeting takes place on a balcony on a bright day. It's a lovely scene with excellent music and purposefully in full sunlight. Again, like the blue curtains, there were plenty of alternatives for the setting of the scene, but the writers chose this one. Once it's confirmed that the princess has been found, the kingdom celebrates. As part of the celebration, they release hordes of lanterns. Interestingly, they released all the lanterns in the middle of the day, making them look almost like balloons. Previously, all the lantern ceremonies had been at night. As we established, part of that is for the sense it makes to have the lights contrasted against the dark sky. But there's no such logical reasoning for that here. So why would lanterns be lit in the daytime? Once again, the lanterns represent joy and celebration just like the first one did when Rapunzel was a baby. But we can take that symbolism further and see that the lantern light is no longer necessary to light up the darkness, because Rapunzel gets to live her life, a life beyond her wildest dreams, out in full daylight with freedom, hope, and joy. So what do you think of symbolism, both as a concept and as it shows up in Tangled? There's also a lot that can be said and has been said about the symbolism of her hair, so if you have thoughts on any of that, share them in the comments below. If you have a topic or story you love, let me know, and I'll add it to my list of things to read, things to watch, and things to talk about. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and share, and you can check my channel description to find out when to expect the next video. And until next time, keep reading, keep watching, and keep digging deeper. Thanks for watching!